an operational workflow in Morpheus, which can be presented as a self-service catalog item to request an S3 bucket. Now, as a common practice, it's very easy to create an S3 bucket with any scripting. But when it comes to enterprise, where they have governance around all objects that are created in public cloud, uh, they have a lot of things that comes as part of that governance. So, like say, when I create a bucket, I'll have to make sure that I have to tag the bucket, like for which business service I'm using the bucket for, which application is it related to, who requested it, when was the bucket created as a tag, and the cost center of the user of that. And also, don't want to give the AWS console access. What you want to give them is programmatic access to the buckets, let's say up to a maximum of 2 users. So you want the user to be created, you want the users to have only programmatic access, you want the buckets to be have encryption by default, a bucket policy to be added so that only those 2 users have access to the bucket. You can also give them an option if they want to enable versioning and logging as well. So this is a request where the user selects thing and orders, and that actually does all these things for you, right? So uh, if you go to AWS, the user has to go to different tabs, make sure that they do them, and to put that as a governance, it's not that easy. If you want to put this as a self-service, it's not that easy to do that with other tools. It would be something that they won't have a better feeling. You would have to go and ask your cloud engineering team or cloud operations team to create a bucket where they have all these governance laid out. You submit a request to them as an Excel sheet or a form, and then they would go ahead and create for you and come back to you. What we are trying to achieve over here is the user does this as a self-service item, right? Like a catalog menu, like a McDonald's kiosk. You go over there, order something, add to your cart, happy with it, order it, and then you see your request actually being processed. Right, so let's jump into the demo of how it is done. So this is my view of a standard persona in Morpheus. I'm going to show you how the order looks like, and I'll complete the order, and then I'll explain you how I have done that as a catalog item in Morpheus. So I'll switch to my self-service persona. This would be a view that your user, so one that is loading right now. So this would be a view that your user would see when they log into Morpheus appliance. So they have a dashboard, they have a catalog where they can select and order things from. So if I go to my catalog, I have 3 catalog items over here. Let's say I want to order an S3 bucket. Okay, so I've provided some information. It says create S3 bucket in the region selected. So the 2 regions that I'm offering is Ireland and North Virginia. And it also says that the tags that will be added to that bucket would be these tags. Okay, so I'll select a business service that I want this for. I'll select an application that it'll be for. I will put a bucket name, like say it's an appliance app bucket. This would be in the region Ireland. I do want versioning, I don't want logging for now. And I would say I need 2 users to have programmatic access to this. Okay, all done. I would say add to order. So as a user, I am not doing any kind of answering any questions which are out of my realm. So these are like basic questions that you're asking the user, and they should be able to understand what they want from it. So I'll place the order right now. Okay, so now the order is getting built. We'll give it a few minutes and see what is the status of the order. In the meantime, I'll show you how I have created this self-service catalog of S3 bucket. So in Morpheus, you get the power of submitting a service catalog, which can be X as a service. A service can be a storage that you are presenting, a network item. It can be like adding a new Office 365 account. adding a user to Active Directory. So anything that you can think of a service that you want to present is something that you can publish as an item from Morpheus. Uh, in Morpheus, we have something called as workflows that fulfill them. So when I deploy a service, which is a stack which has EC2 instances or containers or a PaaS service related to it, that'll be a workflow which is called a provisioning workflow because I'm actually provisioning them. Things which are not actually for provisioning, things which are like say S3 bucket, create an IAM rule or create a new user in my AWS account, that'll be called for operational workflow. So in this use case, when I was creating an S3 bucket, I used an operational workflow. If you look at the workflow, I have three tasks over here. So one is to create an S3 bucket, IAM users, and update the data in my database of what the request that the user entered. So this is something that I'll use for reporting, going back and checking how many requests were there for which. So it'll be kind of something that I can actually report on for future purposes. The questions that I'm asking on the form when we created the bucket were all these questions, which are like business service, application name, what is the bucket name, region, number of users, and these are called option types in Morpheus. An option type can be of various things. So you see the type over here, it is called a select because it was a drop down. This was a free text, so it was a text field, right? And others were select as well. So where do I create these option types? If I go back, I go to my library. Library is where all my artifacts are kept, so which I can use in my workflows and stuff. So there are two tabs over here, option types and option list. So in option type, to create that field in my form, it is very simple. So I go to option type, I click on the add button, right? And then I select what kind of type I want, the field that I want in my form. So this is a text field. So I can give the text field, give a label like bucket name, right? And I would say it is a required or not. I can give a placeholder, put a default value as well. Export this as a tag. Again, this would be a tag as exposed if I'm using this option type in my provisioning workflows, but not for my operational workflows. So I'll give a name. Now, field name, this is the name or the property that would retrieve the value of what the user enters or select in your option type. So this would be like my key name. So if I give this as a value like F business unit, so if I want to retrieve the value like a say F sorry bucket name, this would be the value that I would retrieve from the value what user enters in the text field. And I can use this in my scripts in Python script, which I was creating for the S3 bucket to actually create the bucket with that name for me. Okay, so option types, what I did was I have all these option types. So I have an application, which is a select. I'll show you how I create the select. So this was the bucket name. So if I edit this one again, I've provided a description. I have provided a field name as FB name, which is like I try to use F for anything which is an option type so that I can reference them like it's a field variable that I'm using. I've provided a label. I've also marked that as a required field, right? Now, for my select dropdown, I have to use a list. A list in Morpheus can be of various types. I can create a manual list. I can create a list by doing a REST call to an end system, right? I can also do a list within Morpheus to do a list of specific things in Morpheus, like I can list clouds, groups, and then get that as a data in my list item. I can also do a list by doing an LDAP query to list the users that are there in LDAP and translate that into a result set, which I can use as a drop down for a key value pair and use the value as that as well. So for my examples, what I did was for application, I created a small manual list, a data set, which is this would be the display value and this would be the value for the variable. So if I select Morpheus, the value would be selected as Morpheus. Okay, so what I'll also do is, in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and check if my service is provisioned completely. So by now it should be done. So I go to my inventory and I should see my S3 bucket done, which we executed. So it took 55 seconds. And over here it says status is complete. The users that it created as part of the creation of the S3 bucket are these two users. So it's like test3 and test4. But what it also did is it gave me the access key and the secret key, which now I can use for programmatic access to access those S3, that S3 bucket for these two users. So you see everything is done. Uh, my records are created and they are all good. Okay, so I go back to my inventory. Let me see in AWS console. So if I refresh my S3 console, right, so I have an appliance app that I requested. If I go to properties, I have all the 5 tags created. It was created on today's date, requested by me. This was the application, the business unit, and that was the cost center. Right, okay, let's see the permissions. So the permissions is blocked completely. Do I have a bucket policy? Yes, I have a bucket policy and it is for those two users that I created for. And you see it is mapped to the resource, which is the appliance app, that is the bucket name. Right, let's see what about the other properties. Was versioning enabled? Yes, I requested versioning enabled and versioning is enabled as well. Let's see if the encryption, yes, the encryption is enabled as well by default, which I wanted, and the encryption is there. So these things is something that the user requested and it's already been set up for you, right? So I'll show you what these scripts look like, and these scripts are actually available in my repository, which is public. You can go ahead and use them as you want, right? Now if I go back to my inventory and I continue to where I actually uh, left you with the operational workflow, it was my library items. So what I did was I went through the option list where I created those two manual items like application. Similarly, like application, I have business service that the user selects from. So the business service was two of them. What I also did was I had a number of users, some question about logging, region, versioning. So all these are manual one with two options. See the size, it says two options of each. Right, okay. And when I create this option list, I tie them to an option type to have a field name, right? So I still have to tie them to an option type. So I click on edit. So one of them is S3 application. I gave a field name, changed the type to select list, gave a label name, and then this option list I selected application from here, saved it. So now I have this option type there. All I do is I go to my automation, go to workflows, right? And then I attach these option types to my workflow. So I just do a search over here. So like say if I do search for something like this, it comes up all the items that are there in my option list, option types in my library. It will search those items by just entering a character over here. Okay, so these are option types selected. The same thing I'll do by search by my scripts. So now if I go and show you these two Python scripts, S3 and so I don't have those scripts content over here because I don't want to keep the content over here. I want them in my repository. So I have them in my Git repository. I have the file path of my Git repository over here. Morpheus, when executes Python scripts, it does in py environment. So during the execution, I would say that add these two packages which are required. So Booto3 is required and requests is required for me. And that was for my IAM thing. And then for my S3 bucket, I'm saying that do both free and daytime because these are two things I'm using over there. Right. So again, this is coming from my repository called as Python scripts. I'll show you what the repository, how I added that as a Git integration. So I go to administration integrations. I have a Git integration called as Python scripts. If I edit that, right, so I'm giving a username. I had a password that was provided, and then I provided the HTTPS URL for it. I can provide a key token. I can provide an ADFS access token over here. I can add a key pair, and then I can do the authentication in that way as well if it is my private repository. Okay, all I do is that, and then it actually connects to it. If I click on it, it will not show me the contents of the repository, or all it shows is whether it has a successful connection or not. So if I click on the name now, if the connection is successful, it will say it's a hello. That's it, because I don't want to display my contents of repository over here. I want them to keep be a secret for me. So in the task, when I use these scripts inside this repository, all I'm doing is I click on add, change the type to Python, right? I change the source to repository, select my repository, give my file path over here, so like s3.py, and specify the additional packages that were required for it to install. I change the execute to local and I save changes, and that's all I did. Right, so my code is in my SCM. My form is created dynamically over here. I don't have to code to actually create a form. I've built a workflow, it attaches, it displays my results, the bucket is created, so everything is there. I have a platform where I can self-serve this as well. So imagine if you want to do all of this by yourself in your own developed setup, it'll be too much to do, and the time to value is a lot in Morpheus in that case. Okay. Uh, as I said, these scripts are in my repository, which you can go to GitHub, Custard, and those would be over here, right? So my S3 code is over here. Uh, the IAM user is over here as well. Okay. Hope this was informative. If you have any questions, do reach to support@morpheusdata.com. Thank you.